Howdy, folks. So my name is Taylor Poindexter, and today I will be talking to you about fostering psychological safety in your distributed teams. First things first, to this day, people still think that my last name is fake, so I wanted to pause and let you know that this is not some witty engineering joke. Poindexter is indeed my last name. I make the magic happen at Spotify as an engineering manager. And as they mentioned, I am a co-founder of Black Code Collective, an organization that strives to create a safe space for Black engineers to grow their skills as well as their networks. And who in the crowd has seen the movie Matilda? Nice. Okay, perfect. All right, so it's one of my favorite movies ever, but as I rewatched it when I was preparing for this presentation, I couldn't help but realize that Matilda was actually lacking psychological safety. And so for those of you that have not seen it, Matilda is basically a brilliant young lady with superpowers that is born into a family that does not appreciate her at all. They basically want her to be a wormworth and watch TV, scam people, and not care about education. But Matilda loves reading books, and she continues to be the person that she is, until she goes to her elementary school and meets Miss Honey, who is the first adult that ever invests in her intelligence and believes in how amazing she is. And what ends up happening is Matilda actually leaves her family and is adopted by Miss Honey. And I also couldn't help but realize that is exactly what happens to a lot of team members when they cannot have psychological safety within their teams. They go to a place where they feel that their skills can be nurtured and they are appreciated. And so I wanted to start our conversation today with this small example. So how would I define psychological safety? I define psychological safety as a person knowing they can be vulnerable and or make a mistake without fear of negative consequence, in turn allowing them to feel accepted and respected. And anytime I give an example of psychological safety, someone misunderstands it. So I also want to say what psychological safety is not. Psychological safety is not making your team or allowing your team, to steamroll you into making the decisions that they feel comfortable with. And psychological safety is not avoiding conflict. It is quite the opposite. All right, so why should you care? You've gone to a ton of talks. I'm the last one standing between you and your freedom, so why should you care about this? Oh, it skipped. Oh, my bad. My apologies. I skipped too fast. So if you can't tell, I'm a little bit nervous. I think that you should care about psychological safety because it removes inefficiencies from your team processes. As managers, we put a lot of processes in place. And imagine a situation where someone on your team, or potentially multiple people on your team, realize that a process is not working as well as it could be, but they're afraid to tell you. So those inefficiencies continue to grow and continue to exist. But in an alternate world, imagine if your team members feel comfortable telling you about those inefficiencies and you can continue to tweak and improve your processes to make them even better for the people that you manage on your team. In addition to this, it creates a situation where people are more engaged. We've all been in a situation where we are sharing our ideas with somebody, but you can tell that they're not paying attention to them. And so what do we eventually do? We stop sharing them. But we hired a bunch of smart people for a reason. And so we should take those ideas and in turn make them more engaged. And what that engagement does is it leads to more innovation. Because even though that I think that, I'm decently smart, I have a team of 8 incredible, amazing engineers. And like I said, we hired them for a reason. So I like to use their brains as well so that we can brain mail together and have that innovation that Spotify needs to continue pushing forward. All right, so how do we infuse it into our teams? The first thing is normalizing vulnerability and embracing humility. As managers, I feel like we're often put in a position where we feel like we have to know everything. And the truth of the matter is, nobody knows everything. If my job knew all the answers, I wouldn't be there. If I knew all the answers, why would I need a team of 8 engineers? I would just give all the answers to the robots, they would do the work, and that would be the end of it. So I actually like to focus on the fact that our job is to find answers. Yes, in each of the roles, you need to have a foundation of skills, but beyond that, our job is to ask the right questions so that we can find those answers as a team. And also, by embracing humility, we actually increase the chances that your team is willing to share those ideas. Back to that original point that I was making, that if your team feels like you're genuinely taking their ideas into account, they're more likely to share those ideas, and then you're able to implement those within your team and increase that innovation. All right, next, I really like to focus on building trust. Paul, who is the head of industry at Google, once said, "There's no team without trust," and I could not agree more. And there are two types of trust that I like to build within the team. One, as a manager, down to my team to let them know that they can trust me. And then secondly, within the team to let them know that they can trust one another. So as a manager, I try to be reliable. I often ask my team how I can help them, and then I do it. There are times when I'm unable to do what I told them I would do, or like maybe this, as a middle manager, obviously I'm not the CEO of Spotify, I can't do everything, but at the very least, I report back to them and tell them what I tried and why I couldn't accomplish it. That alone lets them know that I not only care about the things that they care about, but I care enough to do something about it. And that can go a very long way in building the trust within that relationship. And again, as managers, I know that we can't share everything within our with our team. We can't keep we have to keep some things from them. It's just kind of just part of the job. I try to give as much insight as humanly possible into changes that are coming down the pipeline, and I explain the changes. So instead of having that, actually I forgot to read it, I just realized, saying that people said to Matilda, "I'm big, you're small. I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big," or I forgot it. Basically, it's the adults telling Matilda, because they're in a position of power and she's not, there is no way that she could ever be right. And so I try to not take on that mindset, and I try to explain to my team the changes that are coming down and allow them to ask questions, or again, point out inefficiencies that they may see within the processes coming down the pipeline. And I also like to normalize admitting that I don't know things. Back to my original point, is that our job is to find answers. If we knew all the answers, we wouldn't need to be going through all these processes that we're doing. So normalizing that I don't know the answers, but I'm going to find the answers as a team and give them what they need to succeed. And that also models to them as engineers, they're going to find the answers, and as a team, they're going to figure it out. And that can also go a long way in building the trust between managers and teammates. In addition to this, building that team trust among the members, I try to find opportunities for them to share their challenges, their success, and their knowledge. And this can come in a lot of different ways. It can be mobbing sessions, maybe lunch and learns, as well as programming or pair programming, and also creating opportunities to build relationships, especially in a distributed team, because you don't have those little touch points that you would have when we're all in the office. So for these, I try to do at least quarterly fun team bonding events, hack weeks, and I also just started doing trust building activities. If somebody had told me that trust building activities were worth it a month ago, I probably would have laughed in their faces. But after doing it, my team loved it, and it was a good way to get to know one another, since until this week, none of us had met in person, and we had all started Spotify, for the most part, remote. Next, I like to focus on leading and not controlling. So I set expectations and boundaries, and then I empower the team to take it from there. I know as their leader, I'm supposed to make decisions, and there comes time where I need to be the final say, but where it makes sense, I try to empower them to make the decisions themselves. And in that process, they know that I trust them. And so I believe that a lot of managers want all of the decisions to flow through them, because they feel like if I have control of everything, I can make sure that things go right. But the truth of the matter is, even if every decision flows through you, something is going to go wrong, because that's just life. And so I admit that and empower my team, and also remind them that failure is progress. Even if things don't go the way that we expect them to, we learn something along the way. And as we're getting into our groove, I end up basically broadening those expectations, broadening those boundaries, and allowing my team to spread their wings. At the core of this, I also always try to remind them that we're working to reach a solution as a team. And again, I try to normalize asking questions. I ask questions in some of the technical implementations that we're talking through. And I think it's a good thing for a team to see their leader asking questions. And I also ask them if they have questions to make sure that they feel comfortable and know that this is an expectation, if they're comfortable, to ask questions and gain clarity, because the team gains nothing by pretending that we know everything. It's only going to come and bite us in the butt down the line. In addition to this, I also try to ask the team questions individually, questions around how I can be a better manager. Ask them questions like, how do you like to be managed? How do you like to receive feedback? How can I improve your day-to-day work life? And how can I manage you better? This is something very small, but in all of these questions that I ask them is signaling to them that I value their feedback. And in addition to asking these questions, obviously the action is just as important as actually asking. All right. We just touched on this with Jarrett. I also like to set up recurring one-on-ones. These can become meetings that people just want to skip. It's like, oh, I don't have anything to talk about, but I never cancel them unless somebody's sick or something really egregious like that. Of course, cancel it. But especially in the virtual world, these touch points can be essential because these may be one of the few touch points that you have with your team. And this is their time. They can talk about whatever they want. I let my team vent. I let my team talk about ways they'd like me to coach them. I also sometimes just let them vent about their personal life. I know some managers may not be into that, but some of my team members feel like it gives me a more full context of what's going on in their lives, and they appreciate and respect my feedback, so I view that as another opportunity to connect with them and let them know that they can trust me and let them know that I have their backs. And there will probably be times where you get to your one-on-ones and you don't have anything to talk about because the engineer couldn't think of anything. But at the very least, again, in line with what Jared said, I always ask them their happies and their crappies. I actually stole that from my last manager, so shout out to Sean. At the very least, asking that question usually gets them thinking about something. Like, you know what, that did upset me last week, and I'm going to tell Taylor about it now. And if possible, I identify some action items for myself to do and then follow up with them to let them know that I, again, care about the things that are making their lives less efficient and less happy. Another question I like to ask is, what motivates you? This can be especially helpful if you have somebody that may be underperforming, but then it can also be incredibly helpful if you're trying to figure out how to coach someone in their career. Figuring out what motivates them and getting them that kind of work can be the exact thing that keeps them engaged and excited to be part of your team. This is my absolute favorite, building gratitude into the fabric of the team. Some people that know me would call me a positive patsy, but man, this gets me going. Oh. So I have dedicated time for my team to praise each other in our retrospectives, and I know it sounds cheesy, but it is just one of the most beautiful things ever, because when you're in an office together, you see people pair programming, you see them working together, and if they're smiling, you're like, oh, that's probably going well. But virtually, you don't see that. And so what I really appreciated about this kudos column in our retro is I learn about all of the ways my team is helping each other and all of the ways that they appreciate each other and tons of ways that I may not have even thought about or even seen or known about. And it going back to that retro board when we're preparing for performance reviews can also be a good tool for the members on my team to find ways to point to that they help the team in other positive ways. The other one is a bit more smaller, but I find it also to be really effective. If I see something I appreciate, I say it immediately. I let my team know at every moment that I appreciate even the small things that they do because they genuinely make a difference, and a lot of times they're saving me or other members on the team time or effort to figure something out. And also, I try to always make sure I never take my team for granted. I'm sure we've all seen this. Somebody is a high performer on the team, and at the beginning of them ramping up into their high performance, they're getting a ton of praise, they're getting a ton of cheering on. But then eventually, when you're performing at peak performance for a long time, that's no longer peak performance. Somebody on my Twitter actually said this, that becomes your new norm. And then you're no longer getting that praise you were once getting, and that actually creates resentment. So as small as it sounds, I'll also try to make sure I'm never taking my team for granted. This is also ignoring the fact that you don't want your team working at peak efficiency all the time. You want them to have that balance so they can be ready to gear up when you need them to. Next, the dreaded honest and direct feedback. I will admit, this is one that does not get me giddy, but, but I think it is absolutely essential to build a strong team. But something that I learned recently actually put a lot of this into context on why it's so difficult. So with direct feedback, honest and direct feedback, part of your brain shuts down when you feel that somebody is giving you some feedback, and that can actually make it hard to think clearly. So your brain enters into this fight or flight mode, and then you kind of just feel attacked. But to me, it makes perfect sense. Obviously there was a time where we were all not working in offices, we were out hunting and doing other things for our livelihood. But now the office is our bread and butter. It's the way we provide for our families, the way we bring home the bacon. So if you feel like somebody is telling you that you're not actually doing what you're supposed to be doing for the thing that brings home that bacon, it can feel very threatening and you can act irrationally. But that aside, I have found that direct and honest feedback can be a lot easier if you've taken the time to build that gratitude and trust within the team. I have found that if I'm praising my team all the time for the amazing things that they do, it's usually going to outweigh one another. I may occasionally have some constructive criticism, but 9 times out of 10, they're doing more amazing things than they are bad. So when I come to them and tell them that, actually, you know what, how about we tweak it this way? They're usually a bit more open to it, especially if I've taken the time to build that trust and they know that Taylor has my back. So if she's coming to me and telling me this must be something really important, and she's going to actually make sure that we figured out this together and this is not a blame game for us. Another thing about direct feedback is that I think people struggle with it because they think that you cannot be both honest and kind, but I promise you that you can be. Obviously, it takes a bit more care, but really making sure that you take the time to prepare can also make a difference there. And reminding the team that feedback is a gift because it does allow us to be stronger. All right, so here are some things that I think you should be mindful of. Back to the leading, not controlling. I always ask myself before giving some constructive criticism, is this feedback rooted in me simply wanting things my way? If it is, I just keep quiet and just throw that little bit of constructive criticism in the trash. Because if I'm giving constructive criticism, it should be like a measurable gain that the team is about to gain from me giving this feedback. And also, back to that fight or flight reaction, I try to come prepared for the conversation. Even if you have taken the time to build that gratitude and that trust within the team, somebody could still be very offended and lash out, not necessarily super aggressively, but just not take it favorably. So I try to be prepared for that depending on how or using the information that I know about the person and their personality. I also try to be mindful about constructive criticism that I want to give in public and constructive criticism that I want to give in private. The simple rule for me is I basically only give constructive criticism in public if they are putting the psychological safety of the team at risk. Simple example, person A yells at person B, I'm sliding in there immediately. And letting them know this is not how we talk to each other, this is not acceptable, and I will not allow it. And then obviously checking on the person that was just yelled at, and then doing the work behind the scenes to make sure that that person is trained on how to better talk to their teammates. And the reason why I emphasize on doing that in person is because, like, say for instance, person A yells at person B, and then I don't say anything, and then take everything private, that could kind of be a signal to the rest of the team members that this is not a safe space, and Taylor doesn't have my back, and all these things like that. So just nip it in the bud, and then tend into it behind the scenes. And also having an emphasis to always give constructive criticism that is meant to build the team up and never tear them down, with a special emphasis on empathy instead of blame. Because as managers, we often feel like we have context for everything because this is our kingdom and we rule it and know what's going on. But the truth of the matter is there is so much that goes on that we simply don't know about. So actually having that empathy and leading with questions instead of assuming can also go a long way. And remember that every team member can lead from their own lane. On my team, the most junior person is actually the best person for actually doing all of the debugging and stuff like that. She answers the questions like an absolute champ. And that actually allows the more senior engineers to focus on other things. And obviously, my senior engineers are also amazing. But I feel like sometimes people get counted out because of the position, again, those power dynamics. So I want to really reinforce the fact that we should be mindful of that. because leadership makes people feel valued. Yes, the leadership will look different for a junior engineer versus a senior engineer, but everybody can lead from their own lane. And that leadership will help invigorate them. So I often try to ask myself, how can I help my team members lead from their own lane? And remember to meet them where they are. So even as somebody who absolutely loves psychological safety, you could be like jazzed about it and want to infuse it into your team, but trying to force it down their throats is only going to make them throw it back up again. So really make sure that you're taking the time to infuse it gradually at the pace that your team is comfortable with, because another thing that I had to remind myself of, because this last job was the first time I was joining an established team as a leader, a lot of people have been burned by leadership. So even if I'm telling them like, no, you can trust me. Yeah, no, me, you, cool. I have to show them through my action that that is actually true and be patient with them. So even a small example within my team, when I joined, they wanted to give constructive criticism anonymously. But when they told me that, I was like, okay, this is a slight red flag for like psychological safety. And so I simply asked them, what can I do to reassure you and make this a safe space where you feel comfortable giving each other constructive criticism with your names attached to it? And so to start out with, we did do it anonymously, but then we were able to actually get it to a point now where we give each other constructive feedback with the names attached to it. So again, meeting them where they are and then being comfortable doing it gradually, and also reinforcing to them through your actions that you mean what you're actually saying. And as well-intentioned as you may be, sometimes you're not hitting the mark. So I try to ask myself, how do I want my team to feel, right? And then I ask them, do you feel like that? And sometimes they don't. And so I try to figure out, okay, well, what can I do to make them feel that way, and continue having those touch points for myself to continue to help my team improve and feel more psychologically safe. There is a quote from Abraham Lincoln: "I don't like that man, I must get to know him better." So this is where I want to put a fine point on the psychological safety in distributed teams. I try to increase participation in virtual meetings. Obviously, we're still working from home, so I don't force people to put their cameras on, but where they feel comfortable, I encourage the team to put their cameras on, and I also put my cameras on when I'm in meetings and feel comfortable. And doing little things like having them popcorn to one another in a meeting, say stand up, instead of having me call on each other, can help people also feel more engaged. Wanting an emphasis on having these touch points with the team when you may not have them in a distributed team. And this is kind of a silly one, but I also created a fun channel that has been like the livelihood of my team within Slack. All of the people basically on my team have cats, so you talk about that nonstop, talk about vacations, and basically what it's doing is it's creating a three-dimensional picture of each other, because it's so easy to just become like, the person that creates tickets within my team and you don't really know much about them. But allowing the team members to get to know each other can help build trust and allow them to get work done more efficiently together. And when somebody told me this next one, I thought it was very strange and I was very much against it, but it's gone well. Structured fun time. It's something that my team has actually really grown to love, and it was actually their idea. But basically, we try to have team events every quarter, virtually still, but basically doing ice cream making, ice cream tasting, gnocchi making, tiramisu. It's kind of just a fun time to get together and get to know each other, especially when you're distributed and you may not have those hangout times that you would have if you were in the office. And within meetings, leaving time for informal chats, but then also kind of reading the room, and sometimes the team is just not into it and being okay with moving on from that. And it can be at the beginning of the meeting or the end of the meeting. And I also try to meet in person at least twice a year. I have found, I don't really know the science about it, but it's something about meeting in person and like seeing how tall each other are and reading each other's body language. And it can actually be a lot more engaging and create memories so that you're not just somebody, also working behind a computer on the same team as me. It humanizes the team and the team members on it, which is actually really amazing. And I also think of an example a lot of times as I walk through these examples, like say for instance, somebody cuts you off on the highway. They're immediately an idiot. You may think some really mean things about them, but then as you pull up next to them, you realize it's either your best friend or your mom. It's like, oh my gosh, like, okay, maybe you're not an idiot, maybe you're in a rush. You end up adding so much more color to the situation, and they become a more full human instead of just an idiot in traffic. And so basically all of these little touch points are ways of building up that full picture so that if things do go left or things may have a bad feeling, your team members are more likely to kind of give it a pass. Not anything egregious, but like, sometimes you can't tell from a message if like something is aggressive or not because you don't know this person. If you have more context about the person, it can kind of smooth things over and put you more at ease. Next, in a distributed team, I also try to be mindful about my quiet team members, not forcing them to talk if they don't want to, but then also within meetings, asking them if they have opinions about something or if they have some ideas, or checking with them behind the scenes to see if there's any way that you can help them. As well as little status updates about, I feel like there's often a lot of disconnection in distributed teams of like, what is everybody doing during the day? And not even as a manager, even across like the team members. And so my team does little things like update each other when they go on errands. And it kind of adds more context and everything like that and puts people more at ease so that they don't feel like, every time I reach out to Joe at 1 p.m. on Tuesdays, he's not available, when in actuality, he may just have to go pick his kid up from daycare or something like that. So again, humanizing each other and making us feel more connected. You can catch me on the interwebs at Engineering Bay. If you love whiskey, I have Instagram, Woman with Whiskey, or Poindexter.dev. I appreciate the time that you all have given me, and I hope you enjoy your day. Bye. Thank you, Evan. You need it. Oh, thank you.